So welcome. What we're going to talk about today is how to coach technology leaders, engineering leaders, scientific leaders to better results, better communication, better impact. So a couple of goals today. Primarily, I want to make sure that everybody here gains insights about how to coach this very special category of leaders that I believe is one of the fastest growing and most important and largest niches there is in coaching, executive and leadership coaching right now. If you're exploring training to be an executive coach, I think that this presentation will give you a good sense for why the Center for Executive Coaching stands out and is different and might be a fit for you. And if you've already joined a coach training program, I invite you to consider our Coach Master Toolkit, or if attracting more business is an issue for you, the Business Development Intensive. Okay, so that's the intent today. Here's the agenda. Some brief introductions so you know who I am and what the Center for Executive Coaching is. We'll get into how to coach technology, engineering, scientific leaders. I'll show you what the opportunity is. I'll make a few assumptions that I want to share with you, show you a couple of rules, talk about the assessment, and talk about a three-pronged coaching approach. For some of you, that's all you need to see. You'll be done. You'll have gotten what you came here for. For those of you who have interest, I'll then follow up with a quick overview of the Center for Executive Coaching, what our advantages are and what you receive. You don't have to stay for that, but if that's something you're in the market for, stick around and we can talk about that as well as next steps. So first, some introductions. By the way, I'll sprinkle the presentation with some testimonials from some members from the Center for Executive Coaching. Eric just came to our most recent seminar, but we've been working together for a while, and he reports a 400% return on investment from the courses he's taken here. And so I really appreciate that. So quick bio of me. I have 3 kids. You can see a picture of the 3 kids over on the right. I play tennis. I love reading, particularly science fiction, mysteries, things like that. I write quite a bit. I'm the founder and director of the Center for Executive Coaching. I have my own coaching practice as well. And with me, I emphasize technology, healthcare, professional services, elite performers, organizations going through change. I'm the author of a few books, Guerrilla Marketing for Coaches, 2 other guerrilla marketing books, as well as The Way to Coach Executives and Elegant Leadership. Most recently, Coach has come out, and that's doing well as well. You can get that on our website or at Amazon and other online stores. I've developed the Coach Master Toolkit, the Turnkey Leadership Coaching Academy, the Business Development Intensive, and graduated with my MBA from Harvard Business School a while ago. So that's me. The Center for Executive Coaching has become, I think, the leading coach training company for people who want to coach leaders, business owners, managers, up-and-coming talent, and professionals. So we are the on-life coaching company. We have about over 1,000 graduates in 32 countries, as well as from some of the top companies in the world. We train internal and external coaches, as well as leaders who just want to add coaching to what they do. We're an ICF ACTP. We're also approved for the board certified coach certification, in addition to the designation that we give you, which is Certified Executive Coach. We also have Certified Business Coach and Certified Career Coach. You can choose one of those 2 with the program. Okay. By the way, I work from home. You'll hear my new Jack Russell puppy in the background more than I'd like. But one of the great things about being a coach is the flexibility it affords. I know many of you know that, but geez, I get to work from home. I played tennis this morning. Spent some time with my wife after that, going to a client meeting after this. It's an incredibly flexible and wonderful profession. It's just sometimes the dogs are going to bark. So let's talk about it. Let's get to the substance. Ask questions anytime you have them, and I'd be delighted to answer. Okay. So first, let's talk about the opportunity. If you see the image on the right, and you see the T and the I, a lot of technology professionals, really any kind of professional who has years and years and years of technical education, whether it's technology, clinical, scientific, engineering, you'll see that they have great technical depth, and that's that vertical line, the I that you see. And to be truly effective, what they need is the T shape. They need to complement the technical depth that they have as the vertical line with the horizontal line that represents the soft skills, the communication, the influence, the leadership, navigating politics. I'm borrowing this a bit from IBM's conception of the T-shaped employee that they use when they recruit people. They're looking for people who have that T shape, and you don't see it as often as we would like in scientific, engineering, and technology companies. You get a lot of people who love technology, but they're not great all the time at communicating with impact, engaging teams, and applied leadership. At the same time, the change that we're seeing in the press, most recently with Uber, is that big name technology companies are accepting and acknowledging the importance of soft skills and of coaching. So most recently, I think you've all seen what's been happening with Uber, including a viral video where the CEO was seen chewing out an Uber driver. Most recently, a board member, Arianna Huffington, came out and said, we cannot have brilliant jerks at our company. There's reports about the culture there and the effect that this type of individual at the top has had and how it ripples down. And they're not tolerating it anymore. And they're one of many companies. Google has had a huge commitment to coaching and professional development. They're studying all the time what makes for an effective team. Even at Facebook, the founder was coached initially in the early days of Facebook to improve his communication and impact, maybe soften up a few things. And so we're seeing a commitment and acceptance of coaching as we move people towards this vertical I to more of a T-shape professional. So that's the opportunity. Why does anyone care? Well, there's clear benefits, okay? Aside from the publicity and the public relations that you see a company like Uber experiencing, the organization, we know from studies about the impact of coaching, the impact of being a good leader in general, is we're going to see better engagement and loyalty on the client's team, whether it's the executive team or many layers down. The organization is going to get to keep a brilliant employee, but without the pain that a brilliant employee can sometimes cause if they're difficult. Time to innovation and execution can improve because there's less friction. And perhaps most importantly, if we're a little bit cynical, there's reduced litigation risk by creating a hostile workplace. The client, the individual that we coach, can avoid career stagnation, even derailment. It's going to get increased buy-in from his or her team and get more done more quickly. And they get to spend more time on strategy, being a true leader, and technology, again, with less friction. So there's very clear, measurable benefits that far exceed the typical fees for a coaching engagement. Now, I'm going to make a couple of assumptions about you if you want to get into this. Okay, one is that you can be on equal footing. You can be on equal footing with a client who's going to be demanding, who's in a leadership role, they're in a dynamic company. You have to know how to hold your ground. You have to know when to speak out, when to hold them accountable, when to make observations about their behavior and the consequences, especially if they're an abrasive leader. And you have to have been trained properly as a coach. Okay, so a lot of this won't make sense to you if you're coming from more of a, I don't know, either an ad hoc or a slightly fluffy life coaching type program. Okay, it helps a lot to have credibility to coach technology leaders, but you don't have to. Interestingly, I know some pretty successful coaches in Silicon Valley who are successful precisely because they don't know technology. And that's what they say. They say, you have plenty of people who know technology and your culture is giving you trouble. Why not bring somebody in with a different perspective? So there are different ways to get credibility. I'm not saying you have to come from a scientific, engineering, or clinical background. So that's really good news. And finally, I'm assuming that you know how to stand for results. And sometimes you might feel that you care even more than the client does about improving. And that can be a really frustrating situation. Okay, so those are some assumptions that I'm making. By the way, feel free to ask questions anytime or comment, and I'll do my best to respond on the fly. Okay. So I also want to introduce you to 4 rules before getting started. 1, this is really important. You don't necessarily want to enter into a coaching engagement if the client would be better served in a different role, right? If the client loves technology and just doesn't have an interest in leading people, why put him in a situation where he's going to fail? So let me give you 2 cases, right? Sometimes I'm called in and really the conclusion is, you know what? You don't want to do this. So let's not. You have some amazing strengths. Let's take those strengths and let's put them to work for you. So I worked with the founder and CEO of a decent sized technology company, and he just didn't like the people side of the business. And, you know, we talked for a while, and ultimately his decision was, rather than struggle with this, he brought in a true CEO to run the company. The company was growing. It was at sort of an inflection point where it needed to become more mature. And so he decided he would focus on his passion as the chief technology officer of the company, developing new technology solutions to roll out. But, you know, that's what he was. That was his strength. That's what he wanted to do. Made perfect sense. You don't want to force coaching onto people when it's not a fit. Similarly, had a brilliant technology consultant as a client, kind of on the verge of moving up even further into the senior executive ranks, but she consistently demonstrated issues building relationships with clients. She would get argumentative and just had trouble collaborating with clients, and she just wouldn't change. And so the company moved her to an internal role where she was, you know, brilliant at what she did, and they decided, look, we're just going to move her away from clients, let her focus on her strengths. Okay, so that's a really important first rule. You don't, coaching is not a panacea. It's not a silver bullet. And if it seems like the client has strengths, which they always do if you're coaching them, but has a blind spot that they don't want to correct, just amplify the strengths. Get them in a role where the weaknesses are not going to derail them or cause damage to the company. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2, this is the Achilles heel of coaching, right? You can't coach somebody who doesn't want coaching. The client has to want it. I found 2 types, right? My favorite is type 1. These are executives and leaders who are already excited. They just want coaching. They're coachable. They can't wait to have somebody like you or me to be a sounding board, a confidant, have a coach. I have a client like that I'm meeting right after this webinar. And he has sent me this morning 3 emails about stuff he wants to cover. He's awesome. He's not what you'd call an abrasive technology leader. He has that T-shape. He wants to just keep getting better. So he's totally coachable. He's the president of a very large, growing, publicly traded company. It's a delight to work with him. Now, type 2 is perhaps the more common and what we'll talk about here a little bit more. This is the technology, clinical, scientific engineering executive that might need a stick to be coachable. This is somebody who doesn't even know that there's a problem with their impact. They have a blind spot. And so they have to be presented with data about their behaviors, number 1. And number 2, not you, but the organization has to be willing to send a strong message, including consequences, if the behavior does not change. Okay, so that's rule number 2. The client has to want coaching. So rule number 1, the client is in the right role and wants to be in that role and is willing to do what it takes to develop the full profile of someone who can succeed in that role. Rule number 2, the client has to want coaching. Rule number 3, you as the coach have to be set up for success. I see this a lot with coaches. They get themselves in these situations where they want to be the savior or the hero of somebody, and the company leaves them in the lurch. Their sponsoring organization leaves them in the lurch. I don't take any engagement unless I'm absolutely sure that the client, which is the person I'm coaching, the sponsor, and I, or you, are on the same page, on board about the value of getting results. And I want to make sure that we all agree on the outcomes for success such that everybody agrees, yeah, if this goes well, there's easily a 5 to 10 times return for both the client and the client's career and effectiveness and the sponsoring organization. And look, you don't need a scientific formula or algorithm to do this. I just ask each party and I say, look, I don't want to coach you unless there's a 5 to 10 times return. You tell me, what would it mean to create at least a 5 to 10 times return on my fees? And if they can't come up with it, I'm not going to do it because I'm going to get an uncoachable client and I'm not going to get the support I need from the organization. And finally, there needs to be agreement about confidentiality and how results are reported, right? The ICF does a great job talking about the importance of confidentiality. Unfortunately, in the real world, HR often wants more information than I'm willing to give. You do a 360 and sometimes the client wants to know who says what and can even go on a witch hunt to find out who might have given negative feedback. I mean, you can get into all sorts of situations and I will not violate confidentiality. In fact, the first time I had a coach, my coach violated confidentiality. So this is a real sore spot for me. So I want to make sure I'm set up for success. That's number 3. And then the final rule is to use data. Look, you're working with left brain types here. Technology, engineering, scientific leaders, they respond well to data. So let's use it. Let's use that data. Let's get into the way they think and listen and give them some data. So I want to do nowhere to hide coaching, starting with a nowhere to hide assessment that provides data from enough angles that the client can't avoid the truth about their impact. And so what this means is you need a highly reliable, validated, normative, that means comparing the client to others, not a 4-square box, assessment in addition to feedback that's confidential through a 360-degree verbal process. And I'll talk about that in a moment. But data is super important to get the coaching going. Okay. And again, are there any questions? I want to stop here for just a second. We'll get into the overall process next, but we've talked about some assumptions. We've talked about 4 rules, and now it's time to talk about the process of coaching technology leaders. Okay, so again, ask anytime. Let's talk about the process. Okay, what I'm showing you is a 6 to 12 month coaching engagement. I typically meet weekly with my clients initially, then we go to every other week, and then even monthly. And again, it depends. I'll ask the client what works for them. I have some clients, I meet them every other week for a couple of hours, some just monthly. Sometimes I'll spend a whole day, do a seminar, do some coaching. There's all sorts of ways to do it. The rough flow looks like what you see here. We start with an assessment, and then there's a 3-pronged approach. And again, I'll get into the details shortly. The 3 prongs are behavior change, coaching on current issues and challenges, and an optional leadership curriculum, especially for clinical and scientific folks who might not have had education about fundamental leadership issues. Okay, and we're tracking results throughout. So a couple of you are asking, by the way, how do you get this 5 to 10% times return if we're not talking about sales or creating a product? And your client will be able to tell you. Simply, for instance, moving up to the next level is great. I had a recent client, he said, Andrew, you just earned your fees by getting me clear on what my CEO wants from me. That was remarkable. He was having trouble getting clear on his expectations, and that was worth it for him. And we figured it out together. For some, it's getting control of their time. For others, it's, look, I just can't get my team to do what I need them to do. And of course, as a result, our projects are late. We're not delivering. We have a mess in our operations. Okay, so they'll tell you, they know. Don't feel like you have to suggest to them. If they don't know, then we're in trouble. Then I have to say, listen, I don't know that this is a good idea for us to get into coaching. Okay? But this is the process. Assess, and then a 3-pronged coaching approach where we can talk about behavior change, current issues and challenges, some sort of leadership curriculum that I'll discuss in a minute. And again, we're tracking results as we go. Everything should have teeth. Everything should have results. or you're not coaching in a way that's going to get you referrals and ongoing work. So let's start with the assessment. Again, nowhere to hide coaching means an assessment where the client just can't wiggle out and say, this isn't real. Okay, so I'm going to use the example of an assessment tool called the Profile XT that I really like. If you join the Center for Executive Coaching, you'll get to do a Profile XT. You'll see how to use it. What this particular tool does is put the client on a bell curve compared to other similar professionals. So what's great about it is it's not ipsative. Ipsative is like the Myers-Briggs, where people just sort of report how they feel about different things, and they're put on a 2x2 grid. This is a highly reliable, highly validated tool, so much so that the U.S. Department of Labor allows you to use it for hiring. And it's normative, meaning your executive gets to compare him or herself to other executives on a bell curve. And so we can develop insights that are not perceived as good or bad. We take the judgment out, we put the data in. We just say, here's where you are on a bell curve. What are the implications for how you have to adapt or stretch? And what I love about this is I can then put all the team members, all the executive team members on the bell curve and talk about how the team can get along better. Okay, so the assessment should be data driven. Let me give you an example. Here's real data from a client, scrubbed. There's the Profile XT gets into 3 parts. I'm going to show you 2, thinking styles and behavioral traits. So when you see the numbers 1 through 10, don't think about good or bad or scores. All right, remember the bell curve. 67% of the population of executives and managers will fit within a 4, 5, 6, or 7. If somebody's a 10, they're a couple standard deviations out from the mean. That means about 9 or 10% of the population are like them. So here we have a client that's pretty typical for a clinician or a technology leader who's a 10 on the learning index. This is how quickly they learn, how rapidly they process information. It doesn't mean smart or dumb. It's not an IQ test, right? So you could be on either side and be in Mensa. You could be a genius on either side of this scale. This is more about speed. So if you think about a wine jug, somebody who's an 8, 9, or a 10 has a really big opening to the wine jug. Stuff flows in really quickly. Somebody on the left side, you have a more narrow opening. Stuff flows in maybe step by step, more concretely. But you could both can still have the same size jug. So we're not measuring the size of the jug, we're measuring how quickly they learn. So if you have somebody here who's a 10 on learning, a 9 on verbal skill, meaning how well they communicate, their vocabulary, verbal reasoning is an 8. You know, how quickly they process verbal information. Imagine this person trying to communicate with somebody more to the left of the scale. You could have this person being very impatient. People feel like they have to read this person's mind. This person could easily, if they haven't had training or coaching, get dismissive, come across as arrogant, interrupt, and so forth. And by the way, you can typically, one can adapt or stretch 3 boxes to the left or right. So this person who's a 10 on learning index really is going to have trouble with anybody who's a 1 through a 6. And let's say that their technology company is marketing to the masses. And remember, the masses are going to be, 5, 6, right in the middle there. This person might have some trouble approving marketing that actually appeals to the majority of the population. If he has members of the team on the left, we're looking at some conflicts. And so what we're doing, as one of you says, is we're taking judgment out of the equation. We're putting data in. And so now, instead of hearing this person's driving me crazy, we're saying, well, look, here's where you are on the scale. What are the implications for you and how you have to adapt or stretch? Similarly, when we look at some of the behavioral traits, and this is not the whole Profile XT, I've just extracted a few. You have somebody here, same executive, is an 8 on what's called energy level. So this is somebody who can juggle multiple projects at a time and likes doing that and is fairly hard charging. At the same time, there's many technology workers who are 2, 3, or 4. They like to do one project at a time. They like to get it right. They don't like to juggle. They like to do things in sequence, not in parallel. So you can see some extremes here that can cause some trouble. On the accommodating scale, this particular executive is a 3. They're fairly low. They're not a particularly accommodating individual. So again, what are the implications for this person? Let's say they report to a board or to a parent company in terms of following the rules, accepting goals, accepting structures. We can also see the independence scale. Here we have an 8, so they're to the right of the mean again. So you have a low accommodating, highly independent person, very fast processor, likes to do lots of projects. They make fast decisions. If you look at decision making, that's a 9. And they're not particularly sociable. Sociability is not unlike the introversion extroversion scale, except here we can put the person on a bell curve compared to others. They don't like small talk. They don't like networking. They probably don't like to hang out outside of work. And as far as assertiveness goes, they're right in the middle. That means they can flex either way. And they're pretty flexible here, although if they're up against somebody who's more assertive, given their accommodating and independent scales, this is somebody who might perhaps do their own thing and not tell somebody about it. So this kind of data I find to be invaluable at the start of any coaching engagement, however, particularly with technology, clinical, scientific, engineering leaders. Any questions about this? Any insights or observations of your own? What I love about this tool is the next part, because what I can do is put their whole team on a chart, right? This is great follow-on work for you as a coach, right? We want as many openings as we can to bring value to the client. And so what you see now, the L, the red L, is the client. It's the executive team leader. And now we can see what the whole team looks like. And this is not uncommon for a technology company. You have a learning index off to the right, verbal skill, numerical, all off to the right. You have a couple people on verbal skill who are 6s. So, those folks are going to maybe need a little bit more step-by-step information, and the leader is going to have to know that. And there might be some team conflict, as the 6s might be on page 2, the rest of the team's on page 50, and they might have to say, hey, can you stop and confirm our understanding? And again, if the rest of the company has people who are more in the middle of the bell curve, there's some issues with this team, right? You have an impatient team here. And if they have behaviors that are abrasive, you can see a compounding effect creating a pretty tricky culture. Now let's look at the team in terms of behavioral traits. Look at the energy level. Our leader is an 8 and has 4 people who are 3, 4s, or 5s. In other words, about 3 stem cells or more away. These people could feel pulled too quickly. They could face burnout. They could feel like, this let's get it done, let's do more is too much for them. And the leader has to understand that, because they could be great at what they do. The leader might have to work with them. At the same time, the leader can use them as a quality check, because the leader, and especially whoever's at number 10 who has super high energy, they tend to dabble. They do lots of different projects. Sometimes they don't finish on time. The folks over at the 3 and 4 can be a nice balance. On accommodating, look at this team. Let's say this team, as is in the real case, reports to a parent company. You basically have a bunch of mavericks here, especially when you look at accommodating and independence. Again, not uncommon. You have 1 7 on the accommodating scale who might be someone that the leader can look at as a balance to say, hey, are we being too maverick here? Help translate for me what the parent company is thinking, right? They can get some coaching and support from that 7. On independence, super independent team. How does the team leader deal with the 2 10s on the team? When you look at decision making, you have 3 people, including the team leader, who make very fast decisions. But then you have 3 people who are 3s and 4s who like to gather a lot of facts and take their time and ponder. You can see some conflict on the team, right? Have you worked on a team where you had some folks who were like, hey, hold on there, let's do some more research, and others who said, that's enough, let's go. Sociability, same thing. You have everything from a 2 to an 8. And so the team leader is going to need to know this and adapt, especially because he's the lowest on sociability. And on assertiveness, sure enough, there's a 10. So you have a group that's in the middle and there's a 10. Whoever that person is could be an outlier, could be perceived as too assertive. And again, if that person's right for their role, there could be some conflict, and the team leader needs to know how to bring this person in. So again, I love starting with data. Data makes a huge difference. This is just one of the things I think you need to do when you're working with team leaders. Okay? So again, there's some questions about how do I get this. When you join the Center for Executive Coaching, we give you one of these so you can see yourself, and then you're encouraged. It's like any other assessments. It's not something owned by the Center for Executive Coaching. I can put you in touch with the gentleman who's our liaison to this company if you would like, and you can email me if you don't want to join the Center for Executive Coaching, but you want to use this. The next thing I want to do is a confidential 360-degree assessment. I want to get real data about the impact the leader has. I'm old school, right? So I want to at least get on the phone or be in person. And again, it's confidential. None of this goes through HR. None of this goes on the performance review. Okay, this is just between me and the client. And I don't tell the client who said what. I'm looking for trends. And what happens is the data presented back to the individual often hits him or her like a ton of bricks. Because often these folks are not self-aware, right? I mean, a technology leader, take a surgeon who's been a surgeon his whole life, is the king of the surgical suite, and suddenly moves into hospital administration, reporting to people, having to collaborate. I mean, they're just not aware sometimes that they need to change their style. They're not in the operating suite anymore. By the way, the goal here is not to overwhelm them with a long list of things to do differently. Usually we can synthesize and find the one piece of feedback or advice that will have maximum impact. And we can supplement this with some online surveys. Like the Profiles suite of tools has something called the Checkpoint 360. That is an online tool. It presents a report on 18 different leadership competencies. You can see how the self rates themselves, the client rates themselves, how others rate them, how the manager rates them, and much more. But I like to do this old school type of thing. Okay, let's see. Let me stop here. There's some good questions. Does the assessment, the Profile XT, give you instructions on how to interpret? Yeah. If you join up with that group, I mean, there's a whole, you don't even have to get certified, but there's a lot of training. There's a handy dandy reference guide, lots of support. One says, what if the company wants to use their own assessment? I'm happy to do that as long as it's validated and reliable. So I'm going to ask for the reliability study, but I can work with the company, right? I'm not going to fight a battle that gets me kicked out of the company, because this is a marathon. As long as there's good data we can present, I'm fine. Okay, Dave says, I just landed an engagement specifically working with manufacturing engineers. The data was highly appealing to them as engineers, and he used the Profile XT. Okay, good, thanks. And again, this is not an infomercial for the Profile XT. The point here is you got to use data, and it has to be validated and reliable. Most coaches, unfortunately, are using stuff that is sort of has appeal, marketing appeal, but may not be as valid as you would wish. So we combine that with the 360. The other thing I like to do with a client is what I call the leader's dashboard. This is something you get when you join the Center for Executive Coaching. But basically on one page, I want my client to tell me their vision for their career and the organization, their mission, their top values, their top 3 initiatives, their top 3 metrics for success. I want a list of, up to 10 to 20 key relationships they have up, down, and across their organization, maybe outside the organization, and up to 3 professional development needs. So this helps me to see how clear they are on probably the most important things a leader has to know, and can open up the door for additional coaching if they're not clear on these things. Like some leaders in healthcare can't get 3 top initiatives. They have 50. Now, how are you going to lead 50 initiatives? There's just not enough time. So we have to get them to synthesize and figure out what their real top initiatives and performance metrics are for success. Okay, so those are the 3 things we do for the assessment, and that sets us up with a coaching plan. And basically, with most technology, scientific, engineering, clinical personnel, leaders, managers, we're going to do a three-pronged coaching plan. And the percentage of each element can vary. But the three prongs are behavioral changes, coaching on current issues, which of course will tie back to the behavioral changes very often. And I don't want to spend more than 15% of the time on a leadership curriculum, although for up and coming high potential leaders, often the company wants me to do more on the leadership curriculum, and that turns into a coaching academy. Okay, so let me take you through each. Prong one is behavior change. This is particularly important for a client that comes across as abrasive or has some blind spots. So what we're going to do is pick one behavior that the client's going to work on, like let people finish, give positive feedback, give frequent feedback about how my team is doing, his team is doing, show up on time, acknowledge people for their contributions. We want something simple, concrete, and specific. And there's two processes that support the behavior change that we're going to do. The first follows the AAA model for behavior change. The AAA model, there's 3 A's, right? What we want to do is, the first A is become aware of the pattern that they have now, right? So become aware when they're tempted to go back to the old behavior that caused them some trouble. The second A means avert or move away from that behavior, right? Make a conscious choice to get away from that behavior. And the third A is choose a better alternative. So what we're going to do as a coach is help the client create a new routine, a new habit based on this AAA framework. So the first week of the behavior change, I just want them taking notes about when they're tempted to go back to the old behavior. I want them to act normally and just take notes. We want to find the patterns, and then we're going to prioritize, use the 80-20 rule to prioritize when the difficult behavior is coming up, right? So maybe it's in a meeting with a particular person. Maybe it's a particular type of meeting. Maybe it's after lunch because they don't eat lunch. Maybe it's early in the morning because they're stressed because they get in late and they're all the traffic. I don't know. But we're going to find out when things are happening that shouldn't be happening, and we're going to come up with new strategies. We're going to pre-plan the most common issues. We're going to practice. We're going to role play. And then as needed, we're going to add other tactics to make the new behavior a habit. Other tactics could be affirmations, grounding or anchoring, to use a term from neuro-linguistic programming, the new behavior in positive reinforcement and feelings, and the old behavior in some negative feelings. Thinking about the vision for their career, building in rewards. And at the same time we do this, we're noticing and reframing maybe some false perceptions or assumptions where applicable, right? So one belief might be, hey, I have to be the smartest person in the room. You can imagine the behaviors that can cause, so we do some perceptual coaching too. And again, the Center for Executive Coaching has methodology for not just behavioral coaching, but when perceptions come up, for perceptual shift. The second process we want to do is get a support loop going. Marshall Goldsmith is the granddaddy of this. You can read about his approach in What Got You Here Won't Get You There. He has a whole thing called stakeholders-centered change. He calls it feed forward. I don't need to get that fancy, right? I embed this in the process. Basically, I just want my client asking a few people that are supporters, what are they doing well? What could they do better? And I want something measurable. On a scale of 1 to 5, I want to know how often did people see the new behavior? And that way we have something measurable and behavioral that we can focus in on. We can set a goal to get a 4 or a 5, about a 4.5, a couple months in a row of seeing the behavior change. Now, part of that means we're going to have to give the client coaching on how to receive feedback and advice, because even at senior executive levels, we see clients that are pretty stubborn, that have thin skin, that take things personally. And you can imagine the difference a client can make just knowing how to ask for and receive feedback and advice in a positive, constructive manner without taking it personally. So that's prong one, is behavior change. Now, I don't always have to do this or emphasize this. Again, the client I'm meeting right after this webinar is a delight. People really like him. He's a very good leader. So we focus more on prong two, which is current issues. And so here we're using really good coaching, active inquiry, powerful questions, great listening to help our client resolve current issues. So, if you looked at the emails my client sent about our meeting today, there's one person who's driving him crazy on his team, so we're going to talk about that. There's some real issues hitting the goals for the quarter and holding people accountable. And this is a client that's not particularly assertive, right? So the behavior change we are doing is focused on being more assertive. And so these current issues almost always tie back to the behavior we're working on. Here, it helps a lot to be ready. It helps a lot if you have a set of coaching toolkits for the most common leadership challenges and issues that come up. And that's where the Center for Executive Coaching, one of the areas we shine. And in fact, if you're already certified as a coach, you can get these toolkits separately without having to invest in a whole certification program. And so, what comes up commonly for technology leaders? The ones you see here. How to engage people, how to resolve conflict, how to lead high-performing teams, how to manage up, how to communicate with impact, how to collaborate more effectively, leadership presence, how to influence, how to set and communicate strategy, how to handle overwhelm and too many priorities with too little time, how to deal with a new role or a new manager, how to create a high-performing culture, how to lead change. These are the most common, but there's 27 toolkits we have, so our members are prepared with real-world coaching strategies. If you don't have these, I replace a lot of coaches in organizations where my clients say, thank God you have these, because my last coach just sat me down, said, what do you want to talk about? And I just felt like we were going nowhere with never-ending questions. So again, you have to be properly trained in real-world coaching and the demands of high-level clients here. Finally, prong 3 is a leadership curriculum as time permits. So look, often, a 1-hour coaching session, a 2-hour coaching session, maybe there's some time left and the client is really engaged, they don't want to leave. It really helps if you have a coaching toolkit of methodologies because you have great content that you can also bring up when appropriate. So, sometimes I'll ask a provocative question based on my intuition about something I think is going on, some gap in client awareness or skills, some theme that keeps showing up. And I'll say something like, how's your power base? Or, how much support do you have from the top levels of the organization? I might say, what kind of culture are you trying to create? Or just tell me how you resolve conflict. And if these things tie back to the current issues, but, the client hasn't presented anything yet, often they want to talk about this. They love it. It's a great value add. And again, you can only do this if you have coaching frameworks and methods in hand. This is super valuable at all levels of the organization. I find that up and coming talent love this. They want to spend as much time as possible on this. And so we tend to tie this curriculum to the real issues they're facing. And again, everything has to tie back to the initial engagement goals. We're not just going off on a tangent. It's all relevant. It's all practical. It's all about application and results. So how do we track progress? 2 ways. First, behavioral change, right? So again, the client is going to ask some people on a scale of 1 to 5, how often did you see me put in place this new behavior? And we're going to track it once a month. And the goal is to see 3 months with like a score of 4 to 5. If you look at this particular client, this is made up, but they were 2.5, not particularly good, right in the middle, neutral on whatever behavior they're trying to change. Month 2, they were a 3. Month 3, they finally got up to a 4, but then something happened and they slipped. Maybe they exploded in a meeting, who knows? And it took a while to work their way back up. To be candid, 3 to 6 months, you should start seeing some pretty good change. And then you can either move on to another behavior, do another 360 verbal, and keep helping the client to improve. And if the client's a true leader, they'll have issues they want to work on. They'll want to keep engaging you. The other way to track progress is by asking the client, so is it achievement of quarterly goals? It's whatever's important to them and whatever they're measured by, right? Is it team milestones? Is it an increase in innovative ideas that get executed? Maybe sometimes I'll do a time study. so that we can see the changes in focus and use of time by the client, right? They need to be a real CEO or COO and less of a micromanager. We might interview the CEO or client's manager and just see if they're satisfied. That is sometimes all you need. And sometimes it's about another 360-degree feedback exercise. You know, the online ones like the Checkpoint 360 that I use gives real-time data so you can see actual numerical improvements in leadership competencies, but sometimes a qualitative 360 verbal can work equally well. So that's how we track progress. Let me give you 3 case studies, take some questions, and then I'll tell you about the Center for Executive Coaching for those who want to stick around to hear about that. So 1, classic case, all of these are very common. This is a person in a leadership role who was too much of a micromanager. So the presenting issues were as follows. 1, a 360-degree feedback exercise revealed that the leader just wouldn't get out of the weeds. That's exact language from at least 3 or 4 people. And you know what? We found a limiting perception. The leader said, well, that's because I can't trust people to get the job done as well as I can. So that tells me we not only do behavioral coaching, we better work on some perceptual shifts. The Profile XT noted some issues on the assertiveness scale. The person was a little bit to the left on assertiveness and yet had a very assertive team, and so tended to shy away from conflict or tough conversations. So what was the approach we used? 1, we listed each member of the person's executive team and talked about different strategies for each member. So we went from general, I can't work with them, I can't trust them, to discussions about how to set expectations with each individual, right? That's often a great coaching strategy. Go from the general, all or nothing thinking to specifics. 2, we took time to pre-plan and practice conversations, right? I would role play. I'd be one of the people. And we practiced new conversations that were focused on leading, on delegating appropriately, on asserting appropriately versus stepping in and just doing it for them or micromanaging. And then we did some coaching about, you know, what's an ideal team look like? Because it turns out that the client was skeptical about some of the team members and whether they were in the right roles. So some of the coaching was about making tough decisions about people who didn't meet expectations, right? Do they stay? Do they go? Do they get redeployed? Do they need coaching? What do we do with them? Do they need training? And then again, we have a methodology in the Center for Executive Coaching that shifts fairly deep beliefs. And one of the reframings that we worked on was, if I give my employees resources and clear goals, they're likely to get the job done. So we moved away from whether we trust the person or not to just giving them resources and clear goal. Okay, and then as discussed before, this client had to get ongoing feedback from the team to reinforce what was working and see, you know, how often did he really step in and micromanage. One of you is asking, when you have a moment, can you address what you give to the sponsor in terms of a final report given confidentiality issues? Yeah, you know, one of the things about the Center for Executive Coaching is you get real stuff. And so in there, we have a real report of a real client. And basically, my strategy is I have the client write it with me. I say, look, we're going to meet with probably your CEO or a board member, and we're going to meet with HR. Let's talk about where you were, the improvement you made, maybe share something you're comfortable sharing from the Profile XT and the 360, and let's talk about what's changed in a way that makes you comfortable sharing it. So I want them to write it. A lot of coaching is about doing less and having the client do more. And again, we give real examples of all of this in our program. Okay. Let's see, one asks, how do you work with a leader who wants to change a behavior but doesn't want his team to know about it? You know, I got to be honest, I'm not going to take that assignment. They want it to remain between the coach and the client only. That's a really hard assignment for me. You know, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, right? Did the tree fall or not? A big part of being a leader is being willing to go to people and ask for feedback. Now, there are ways we can do that where the client doesn't know there's a coach involved, right? So I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but I want a client that's willing to go to people and get feedback and advice. If they're not willing to do that, I don't want to coach them, right? And if, you know, look, if they don't want to do the 360, which is very, very rare, I'm skeptical. right? But I want to make sure then that we have a clear understanding of the behavior they want to change and how they want to get better. Case study number 2. This is a classic for technology, scientific companies. This guy looks like a mess and I can't put him in front of investors. All right, so here, this was with an investment banker / private equity person, that often finds brilliant technology folks, but they're a mess. And so here we worked a little bit differently. Behavioral changes, we worked on posture, eye contact, grooming, dress. I actually had a partner in this who was an expert on some of this stuff. Nobody comes to me for dress, although I can help with posture and eye contact. And we did a lot of presentation coaching, ongoing videotape drills, presenting, answering tough questions, presenting some more, ad nauseum, so that this person was fluid. Like rehearsing for a piano concerto concert. We just kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And then also communication and engagement strategies for each member of this person's executive team. A lot about this person was about being liked and having that, that classic nonchalant persona that you sometimes see among young, more hip tech leaders. So we wanted a perceptual change to focus more on being respected. Okay, and so we developed some skills to set expectations, to hold people to outcomes. And we talked a lot about, there's a triangle we teach in the Center for Executive Coaching about balancing ego, results, and relationships. So a lot of it with this person was sometimes about ego and relationships. We needed to get him better at communicating results, starting with how he carried himself, his behavior. Okay, so that's case study number 2. And case study number 3 is the classic. This is the brilliant jerk. This particular client put on something that other people called his rage face. Anytime you challenged him, his face would get red. He would look like he was going to murder you, even though, he wasn't exactly a physical specimen who was going to murder anybody. But he got this rage face. Everything shut down. And so no one wanted to work with him. They went into like bunker mentality and tried to hide, and nobody would challenge him. So, what kind of company do you have when no one wants to challenge? You get all yes men and women. What was interesting was when he was provided with 360-degree verbal data about this, he had no idea, right? He just had no idea of the impact. And so to get him to be coachable, he had to realize that this was really consequential. If he wanted to continue to lead in that company, he needed to get over this. And so here we use that classic approach that I just shared with you, behavioral coaching especially. He took notes to identify when the old behavior came up. We really worked hard with him to be willing to accept feedback. That alone took a while. We coached to plan alternative responses whenever he felt that rage. And it turned out that this person had what we call a false assumption. I'd rather be right than successful, was basically how he operated. All that mattered was I have to be right. And that was killing his success. And so we worked to make some new perceptions, new beliefs a habit, combined with behaviors, and ultimately he was successful at this. Okay, so those are 3 case studies. That's basically it. That's what I have about how to coach these folks. It's a lot of fun. It's a huge area of opportunity. You can have tremendous impact. You just have to get down, roll up your sleeves, and understand that this isn't about sitting on a couch and saying, what do you want to talk about today? Let's create a space for possibility, blah, blah, blah. That's going to get you fired. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of coach training programs teach, and the approach that a lot of coaches use. Okay, so let me take some questions, and then for those who are interested, I want to talk about the Center for Executive Coaching. Just so hopefully I just demonstrated what sets us apart. I don't think other programs get into depth about how to actually get results in the real world. We do. And again, if you're not interested in a full training program, take a look at our business development intensive so you get more clients, or our Coach Master Toolkit. All right, so let's go through it. Okay, here's a nice testimonial from a 4-time Olympian who went through the program. So look, they're all every year there's more and more of these International Coach Federation approved coach training programs, or ACTPs. And guess what? That's not enough. Okay? They all offer, as do we, ICF core competency training, a cohort with whom to practice coaching, hours towards the ICF designation, required mentor coaching. Everybody does that. But that's not going to be enough. That's like driving school these days, right? You can just learn the ICF core competencies. That's not going to help you set up a successful practice, whether you're internal or external. Just doesn't cut it anymore. Our goal is get you way over to the right of the bell curve. I want you to be in the top 5% of coaches worldwide. I want you to deliver unmatched value and truly significant results for your clients. And I also want to make sure you feel confident, energized, and you love what you do. And so let me just tell you what sets us apart, and then we'll get into it. Okay, so one, with us, you get real life coaching cases and data, coach review documents like somebody asked for, true coaching plans. I mean, it's the real deal, all from my practice and some of my colleagues. Okay, so you're not getting, theoretical stuff. Two, we have 27 practical, powerful coaching methodologies, all situational. Okay, they're all grounded in the best practices of psychology, neuroscience, emotional intelligence, and leadership. And they cover the key conversations you need to have for robust, deep, thorough discussions. They're turnkey. You can use them immediately. You can also use them to give talks, write articles, and ultimately develop your own intellectual property. They're proven to get results and bring value. I've already taken you through some examples earlier. Three, I guarantee that you will get the best marketing support in the industry. And whether you're an internal or external coach, you are going to need this. You're in two businesses, the business of coaching and the business of attracting clients. Okay, so when you join our program, you get a step-by-step process and tools to set yourself apart. You get clinics on conversations to close engagements. You learn how to not sell, but rather coach clients through the buying process. Right? Why sell when you can coach? That's what the best salespeople do anyway. You learn how to choose a profitable niche, develop a compelling marketing message, and the best ways to get visible. But best of all, there's one-on-one support whenever you wish, with me, as well as with some of our other successful coaches. We have a business development intensive that's included. It's like 17 hours of webinars, something like 15 toolkits that walk you through the process and make it easy for you. Templates of marketing materials, including proposals. We review your marketing materials. If you're an internal coach, we'll review your programs and show you how to establish greater credibility. Four, I think we get the best participants, the best cohort in the world. The people who come to us have worked with Johnson & Johnson, LexisNexis, New York Life, the National Basketball Association, IBM, Aflac, Kaiser Permanente, the United States Department of Defense, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Macy's, Ralph Lauren, Deloitte, Booz Allen, Stryker, Ascension Health, Google, Microsoft, Laser Spine Institute, United Nations, Coca-Cola, on and on. Really successful people, speakers, authors, consultants, writers, high-end professionals, military leaders that have just returned from active duty, elite athletes. So that's who we're looking to attract. That's who succeeds with our program. Five, we help you open new doors. I think you have to be more than a coach. We want you to be a trusted strategic advisor. So you're addressing lots of challenges for your clients. You're getting multiple openings, coaching and more. And if you want, we talk to you about writing books, speaking, or creating a firm where you're hiring other coaches to work under you. And finally, you get lifetime support with us. You're not a student. You're a member. You're always a member. You can always ask for support, always join our teleclasses, always have access to our member area. And it's a source of pride for us. So here's yet another testimonial. This was a really interesting member who says the CEC has been instrumental for growing her business. She re-upped a 1-year contract to 3 years for $150,000. And the program has meat. She gets in the room now with serious business people who are smart and seasoned and run in top circles. She just presented to a billionaire. You know, everyone says they're coach right now, but many coaches are not talking about anyone. Many of the business people I know now would not even talk to most of them. They'd leave the room. So the CEC has put her in a completely different orbit. And her circles are saying to her, you've helped me think better. You've helped me accomplish things I didn't think I could accomplish. It's helping her get to the stratosphere. All right. Let me just show you exactly what you receive. Here's another testimonial that from an HR executive saying the CEC program teaches value-focused, results-driven coaching, real results, real situations, real solution. It's reality in today's world, proven methods. So look, let me just tell you my pledge to you. Our goal is your success. The program is designed to show you how to deliver extraordinary value and measurable results to your clients with confidence and competence. That's the goal. I want your clients to rave about you to others and continue to hire you over the long term. Whether you're an internal or external coach, we provide industry-leading in-depth guidance to build credibility. I'll provide the highest level of personal support possible for you, including one-on-one discussions, super rapid turnaround time in responding to your requests and questions. You can rely on consistently high quality of instruction during your program. I'll go out of my way to help you achieve your specific goals, and you're a member for life. We don't cut you loose after you graduate. Okay, you can see what you receive on our website. There's textbooks, there's 3 weekly 1-hour teleclasses, monthly webinars about different coaching situations, a huge member area with downloadable teleclasses, 27 coaching methodologies, essentially our Coach Master Toolkit, coaching contracts and forms, actual assessment results, our business development intensive program, ongoing anytime support. We have a coach question generator that's really cool with over 1,000 powerful coaching questions indexed for different situations. Of course, networking with your cohort. And look, you can get our designation, you can get the BCC, the ICF designations. And if you want to add business or career coaching, just register and put the code name BLUE in, and I will add business or executive coaching for you. And finally, we've just launched a new thing, which is specialty designation. So look, if you want to be like, if you want a designation, we'll create one with you, like healthcare leadership coach. We have people doing that now, and there's a special project you can do to document your credibility and competence as a healthcare coach. And we work with you. There's no other cost to do that. Okay. And then there's lots of options. There's distance learning. We have a seminar coming up in May. We have quarterly seminars essentially. You can do the ICF or not. It's modular. Okay. And again, contact me if you're interested. I'd be delighted to talk to you more. And that's basically the next step. Take a look at our website. If you're interested and in the market and ready to move, I'd be delighted to have a meeting with you to talk about your goals. If you want to test the water first or you're a seasoned coach, you can check out our Business Development Intensive or Coach Master Toolkit. And you can see my email here, Andrew Neitlich at centerforexecutivecoaching.com. If spelling Andrew Neitlich is a worry, which it should be, just go for info at centerforexecutivecoaching.com. All right. All right. Let me take some questions and then we'll wrap up. For those listening to the recording, email me anytime with questions, but I'm going to stop the recording here just so that it's not too long. Thank you.